Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It is the start of school across the U.S. Some have already gone back. Some are going back this particular week, regardless of whether you're listening in real time or maybe on a playback sometime in the future. It's a challenge nowadays with school. And we started talking about that last time we got together with her. We're going to pick up from that point. And she is an amazing psychologist and deals with adolescents, children, adults, parents on these levels and many others. And she is Dr. Gloria Vanderhorst, and she's back with us. Hey, Gloria, welcome. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for having me back.
It's interesting that we're talking about this because I just walked through a convenience store, got a cup of coffee, looked down at the front page of the newspaper. Yes, they still publish newspapers. And of course, you can see it online. And in these parts of the New York area, school is back this week. And it says big letters, full page, back to school. And I'm reading here, educators, meaning what's coming from educators, what they're thinking about. It says learning challenges, mental health, attendance are priorities as students head back to class. And that's kind of what we're talking about, the mental health situation, which we've talked about a little bit, very challenging, especially for teens right now, learning challenges and attendance.
Right.
And there's a lot of kids that have challenges even going to school. Let's start there. What do you do in that situation where you have your child, be it elementary school, middle, or high school, and they don't want to go for whatever the reason is? I'm not talking about just a defiant kid that just doesn't want to. I don't want to go to school.
Right. No,
the reasons. Bullying, self-esteem,
right.
anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that if you're a parent?
It's hard to deal with that, right? Because you love your child. You want your child to be content. You're sending your child basically to a full-time job. If you really think about it,
Yeah.
all right, they're going to a full-time job. And when they're reporting to you that they don't like it, they're afraid of their boss or they're afraid of their coworkers, it's terrifying for a parent. And you're required by law to educate your children.
Yes.
Right. So that means you have to figure out a way to support your child going back to school, or you have to take your child out of the public school system, maybe put them into a private system, maybe do homeschooling. And those are expensive, right? As a country, we've invested millions of dollars in educating our children. And I think right now that investment is going bust. We are not educating our children, right? We're housing them for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. A small percentage of them are getting an education because they invest themselves in that. But I think the majority of them are just kind of tolerating the discomfort until the bell rings and they can run home.
I totally agree with you. I see it. I hear it. I have teens. Everyone is different. Some kids just eat up school. Like they enjoy it. They thrive. They do well. They want to do well. Then, dare I say, the majority of the others either get by or don't. Maybe
or
fail.
Undermine. Yeah.
Right.
Some of them come to school really just to undermine. It's a way that they can help themselves feel better, feel competent, feel successful, right? They're going to bump into people in the hall. They're going to make fun of somebody. They're going to stuff things in somebody's locker, including stuffing a child in his or her own locker. They're just there to express their own frustration that this is not a successful workplace for them.
What's going on here? For a bunch of different questions. Has something changed nowadays compared to, don't want to sound old, but let's say, 10, 15, 20 years ago? So that's question number one. Question number two, is it on the
It's something
municipality, the educators?
well, something has definitely changed. There's no doubt about that, right? And
Hmm.
if you look at what we pay an educator for the task that we are asking them to do, we're not going to get the best quality people
Hmm.
serving in those places. We're going to get a percentage of people who are truly dedicated to education, want to do it, love to do it, would do it even if you didn't pay them, but they're not well paid in comparison to the job that they're supposed to do, right?
Hmm.
They're supposed to turn out people who are highly educated, who are socialized well, and who are competent so that we can put them into the workforce and improve everybody's life so they can make money, buy houses, live in neighborhoods. I mean, that's supposed to be the goal of the educational system, and we're not doing it.
Well, I just got visions in my head as you talk about the compensation. And if you were to pay a life coach for your kid, uh, even a therapist, you would be paying a lot more than what the teachers are getting paid to do what they do.
Absolutely.
And yes, there's some pluses there. You have the whole summer off. You have tenure. You could take a sabbatical. Pension, all of that. There's lots of pluses there, but the base salary may not be where it needs to be for what's being. And to have a classroom of 20 something kids, now you have all these different personalities to manage, because really that's what you're doing. You're
That's
managing the
right.
personality, and then the parents. uh
Hmm.
it's not like every kid is perfect and they want to learn, so you come in and you do your thing as a teacher and you're out. No, there's a lot of back end work that goes on, and then you have to adhere to state guidelines,
Right.
uh with lesson plans. And I'll tell you this, here, state of New York, it is one of the most challenging states in the country if you want to homeschool. There's so much paperwork that needs to be filled out. There's so much
Hmm.
approval that needs to take place. And even that being said, then you get paid for it. So,
Right.
or you have to be a very active part as a parent in the homeschooling. It's not like you just
Hmm.
say, okay, Junior, you're off. Enjoy those videos. I'll be at work today. I'll be home later to make dinner. It doesn't work that way.
Hmm. I think homeschool is a great option for certain families.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we had a neighbor several years ago who homeschooled her two boys and did just a fabulous job of that, both in terms of the content and the knowledge base, and also in terms of socializing them, because there's a whole network of families that homeschool and they get exposed to a variety. They would work for half a day, and then for another half a day, they'd go to the museums, they'd take trips places, they get together with other families and socialize. Great for mental health. And you
Mm,
mentioned earlier that mental health is really one of the key areas that the newspaper is pointing out. We need intervention there. We need a plan for mental
yep.
health for our
Yep.
kids. And the school, by and large, until very recently, did not take mental health seriously, or perhaps the culture has changed and mental health just used to be kind of an integrated part of the system. And then it dropped out in some way. And now we have to bring it back into the system. But we're not helping these kids learn to respect each other, to socialize with
Totally true.
their needs at an early stage instead of waiting until they get so frustrated that the only thing they can do is to strike out in some aggressive way. We're just not doing the job.
And I think we're behind. At least my view of this with kids in school is that they're hiring more guidance counselors, maybe social worker, but that's when it's too late. That's
Right.
when, junior is having a problem, or if there's a bunch of juniors having a problem, well, we have a social worker for you. All right, great.
Mhm.
When I was in kindergarten, centuries ago, I remember, having some challenges. I had separation anxiety.
Sure.
And I even remember in my mind going to a social worker or guidance counselor,
Hmm.
maybe a school psychologist. And I remember, them asking me, because I was big into drawing, drawing what I'm feeling like, yeah, and all of
Uh-huh.
that. Um, but this is all to the point where you now you need help. What about before you need help or
Right.
along the way? What can be done in a school district to support kids?
Well, we can first recognize that every child has emotional issues. And so think about it. If you started the day not just with the homeroom roll call,
Yeah.
but with some small group experiences
Hmm.
where you get to, first of all, dump, right? You've come from home. I don't know what your home is like. I don't know what the stressors were for you as a kid in the morning. But if there was a group experience where kids got to disclose, here's what my morning was like, here's what last night was like. And if you did that all the way through, all right, kindergarten up through high school, so that you're really telling all of these people that they're emotional beings and that their emotion
Hmm.
takes priority. I have to be in an emotional state in order to receive new information. If I'm anxious because mother was irritated in the morning or
Hmm.
father came home drunk last night, all
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
and threw things around,
Hmm.
or if I just sense tension between my parents or tension between my older brother and a parent. All right. I bring that into school with me. And if the morning could start with an acceptance that everybody has brought something emotional in with them, let's get it out in the open. Let's have a safe place to disclose it and to be responsive to the emotional need that it
Yeah.
brings up. Then you can move into math, science, English, writing, art, right? But
100%. I wish there's no way I could agree with you more because it's just that's it. This needs to be okay
right,
before you start learning.
right.
And we don't do that. We don't do
No,
that. We force feed all the learning into a kid's head. But let's face it, they're going through stuff. Like you just said, there's
hmm,
challenges at home. Could be challenges with classmates and
right,
friends. Could be just I'm just not feeling good. I don't know what it is. You're a kid. How do you figure that all out?
right.
We
And
have
that's
a
that's
lot to
going to
catch up
come
on.
out, right? I can't. You can't contain those feeling states. There was a news report on the news here in the DC area last night. An art teacher had been attacked on the playground by two students, right? And so she goes through this process of thinking, I'm going to stop teaching. This is too dangerous. I don't really want to do this. And then she comes to grips with the reality that she loves the work that she does. And so instead of stopping teaching, she starts an organization to facilitate paying attention to the
Mm,
emotional needs of these kids so that they won't be motivated to attack a teacher, right? Be
mm.
irritated by something that's happening on the playground and act out and injure another child. So the emotional state of our children has to start taking priority, or we can't educate them.
You couldn't even educate an adult and if they're not mentally prepared or they're going through some challenges. And even the playground attack. Why did that happen? Were those, I'm sure, I'm going to take a guess here. It's probably those students weren't shaking her down for money. They were frustrated.
Mhm.
There's an
They were
emotional
frustrated. Their needs
reason
weren't being met in some way, and
or
they could have
understood.
carried that with them for, several hours, and then you get out onto the playground and it just explodes
Yeah. Yeah.
because nobody's paid attention to the emotional need that I've been carrying around. And so if the teacher tells me to, stay in line, don't butt in line, right? You want to go down the slide, you stay in line, explosion. I just can't tolerate it.
Yeah. A- And I haven't been given the tools. I don't know how to do
Right.
it. As adults, we don't know how to do it. Now you're talking about, somebody who is could be in middle school or even, even high school and
Hmm.
not know how to handle all of these situations. And I also think too, and I wasn't the best student, but my view here is that a lot of schools are pushing so hard to prepare students for college.
Hmm.
What about if you don't want to go? We talked about that
Right.
briefly
Yeah,
last
we've
time.
talked about that before. Yeah.
Trade trades are important, but we're not really focusing that anymore.
Hmm.
I remember we had, there was different shops. So there was auto shop, there was,
Hmm.
electrical shop. Maybe they're still doing that, but it seems on a different scale now. There's less uh
Oh, I
imp-
think there's much less of it. I think it's going to make a comeback. And I think that's a very good thing because
yeah,
if you look at the United States, we hardly manufacture anything anymore. All right. Computer chips, where are they manufactured?
sure. Yeah.
Overseas.
Yeah.
Automobiles, where are they manufactured?
Mm-hmm.
Overseas. All right. Computers themselves, which we depend on constantly, overseas.
Yeah.
Right? Machinery, overseas. I mean, just clothing.
Yeah.
Look at the clothing labels on anything you buy. All right.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
used to manufacture all of those things, which made a good living for the majority of the population. And we're not doing it. We need to regain it because our population needs to be able to support itself. And
Completely
that's not
agree.
happening right now. We do not have a population that can easily support itself.
I can't imagine being a student and not being very academic or interested in that. That was me.
Hmm.
And nowadays, where you don't have an outlet, you want to be
Right.
creative, you want to learn, but this
Hmm.
other stuff is not doing it for you. And now I just got a memory when I was in school, 11th grade, Ms. Jeslak, she was the
Hmm.
librarian. And
Hmm.
I was always into media, wanted to get into radio since I was 9. And video, first it started with slideshows, and video interests me a lot. And
Hmm.
they had junky kind of video equipment, but she stepped up, and my friend Greg and I made a recommendation and said, you know what, we need some good video equipment. Back then, they dumped about 4 grand in
Uh-huh.
equipment, and that was a big deal. And that wasn't
That's
even a
a big
lot.
deal. Right.
That was a camera and a portable video deck, but
Hmm.
high end stuff.
Right.
For them, it would probably be like 15 grand now. And she signed off on it. And we started making videos and we
That's
started winning
fabulous.
the school awards. I remember
Cool.
winning an award. Here's the ironic thing. I'm 17, barely 17, and I'm producing a show about vandalism in our town.
Uh-huh.
And I would go to a shopping center and talk to adults and ask their view of these different things. They wouldn't they wouldn't talk to me because I was a kid. So I put on a suit with a tie and made an ID that said ABC News or something like that. Right away, people would talk.
Everybody talk to you.
Everybody talked at that point. Um, but I'm thankful and grateful that Ms. Jeslak and the school district saw that, yeah, you know what, we could do this. We
Hmm.
could allow students to have that creativity. Um,
Hmm.
because now what do you do? And yes, there are some video programs and things like that, but it's more like forcing algebra and forcing,
Right.
okay, great. But if that's not you,
Right.
It's
And and pushing everybody to go to college also reduces the standards for a college degree.
mm,
And we've just undermined our society when
yeah.
we do that. Right? There are a variety of other places where people can be successful. Not everybody needs to have a college degree.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about other things to mentally prepare students? Things like meditation,
Mm-hmm.
a more regular basis. I remember there was one teacher, and this was elementary school, and this teacher was into yoga, and she would
Uh-huh.
set aside, and of course, you have one teacher in elementary school for
Right.
your grade,
Right.
in your grade, and you're with that teacher all year long. She would during the week set aside some time, and kids would do yoga or maybe a
That's
meditation
fabulous.
session. And I know there was some parents that probably looked out at that at like,
A
what
little
is this
weird.
teacher? Yeah, but my kids both would say that it was fun and they enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
it. And they
Mm-hmm.
weren't just saying it because it was a time killer. Like, yeah, we
Right.
don't do anything except sit here on a mat and think
Right.
or not. But it was impactful. And the more I hear that schools are teaching energy healing or
Mm-hmm.
Reiki principles, uh,
Mm-hmm.
all of those classes are filled up. And it's not because it's an easy elective, it's because the students are interested, genuinely
Right.
interested in this thing.
Oh, it speaks to your soul,
Right. Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
and the necessary part of being a human being is to understand yourself
Mm,
and to be able to manage your thoughts and your feelings. And so those are all training grounds for teaching children that they can manage their own thoughts and feelings, that they're in charge and they don't have to be overwhelmed by anybody else. They can
well,
manage themselves.
what a shame, Gloria. Our school system and from decades back that didn't or don't do that and should on a much more grand scale
Hmm.
because those things that we could or should be teaching our students, what winds up happening after school? They wind up going to therapy or
Right,
counseling or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that.
right.
But they could be better prepared for a lot of things if it was cool in school to learn that kind of stuff or be
Right, and
exposed to
we
things.
could do preventive things, all right? I honestly think if you started the morning with a small group process, really focused on looking at what's the emotional dynamic you've brought in with you, what are the stressors that you're carrying right now? Can we relieve those so that you can now focus on learning something and
Hmm.
enjoying your friendships? That we would be much better off. The other thing I would add to education is more male teachers.
Of course. And we've talked about that before. Yeah, without a doubt. I just got a vision in my head of, yeah, they used to call it home ec, and now they
Mhm.
call it, consumer sciences or whatever it is. Okay, great. You're teaching everybody how to make an omelet and other necessary skills. But if you can't manage this, who
Mhm.
cares about cooking? Who
Right.
cares about all of that stuff? Um, that's where you need to start. You need to be able to
Mhm.
manage, even to love yourself. So many
Right.
kids, so many adults hate themselves, talk negatively to themselves.
Right.
Imagine if there was some kind of elective. I don't even know what you would call it. I don't know the curriculum it would be, but
Mhm.
like you just said, to learn about yourself and how to
Right.
manage that.
Yeah,
Wow.
to really improve your emotional health. And the other thing is that when children do get into conflicts with each other, there really needs to be a resolution process that they
Mm,
go through. It
mm,
isn't enough to separate them. It isn't enough to send one home. You really have to help children and middle schoolers, adolescents learn how to resolve a conflict with someone else. And we don't do a good job of
agreed.
that. We need
Yeah.
to improve that so that they have a life skill for managing conflict moving forward.
it's more about punishment or consequences than the management part of it. And I get that schools have rules. I remember my son was in, I think it was seventh grade or something, and his friend, buddies, they're friends, they're in the lunchroom, and the friend said, can you, from where you are, could, like, if you were to punch me, could you actually like reach
Did
from
you reach me?
this distance? And my son was like, I don't know, like,
Sure. Boom.
well, that's what happened. And it was just a friendly, like, I wonder if you can, and he hit him.
Yeah.
But guess what happened? Guess what happened? They both
He
got
got he
they
got
got
suspended.
they both got suspended because of the protocols. And I understand that, but they were both laughing at it. But the kid had a bloody nose. Somebody saw it, and like, my son
Right.
was like, we were just playing it, and the other
Right.
kid concurred. But I guess you have to have protocols if somebody is struck, whatever. But yes, to manage the conflicts.
Well, you do not have to implement those protocols rigidly. All right. Here
Yeah,
are two guys who were enjoying themselves.
yeah,
One took up a challenge and actually accomplished it. All right. These guys need to be able to process, and they also need to be able to educate their friends.
mm,
Right. So
yeah,
there's a trickle down benefit to having them process, what do you guys do? What's the outcome of that? What's the impact on the group around you?
sure,
Right? And if you could do an instant replay of that, what would you do this next time?
yeah.
Right? And probably it isn't punch your friend in the nose.
And again, that wasn't, that was just I wonder if you can reach.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
But to your point, resolution. Here's what
Right.
happened. Here's what could have happened. Next time, probably not a good idea to see if you can
No,
actually make it that distance.
right.
And whatever. But those skills aren't taught. The resolution skills aren't taught. It's basically call the parents. The parents come up, take the cell phone away, whatever the
Right. The kid
repercussions
is in
are.
trouble. He gets certain consequences, but that's not helpful.
No, and you know what? That turns into negativity because in that school, I remember a lot of kids would complain about the assistant principal,
Mhm.
and the person had a very negative outlook around kids.
Yeah.
Allegedly, uh,
Mhm.
there must have been a negative vibe if all the kids say the same
Right.
exact thing.
Yeah, expecting them to get in trouble, expecting them
Right,
to act out in negative ways. And
right.
we do tend to fulfill someone else's expectation of us,
Mm,
particularly if it comes across repeatedly, right? That I really expect you teenagers, all right, to be troublemakers. Well, eventually I'm going to fulfill that for you.
I think it goes back to manifesting it.
Hmm.
You become what you think. So you're thinking, I'm going to get in trouble. Guess what? You're going to get in trouble. It's going to
Right. I
happen.
might as well experiment.
Right. Yeah. Or, even the word trouble's in your mind, you're going to find it. It's going to show up
Mhm,
for you.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing that we talked 2 episodes here about school. But so important,
It's
you know,
important.
what's going on here because we are shaping the future of our
Hmm.
population and apparently not doing a great job
Not too well. We need to change that.
for sure. Gloria, your website, if anybody wants to check in with you. Let's say even somebody has challenges with their parents, with their children, parents having challenges with
Mhm.
adolescents or whatever it might be. How do we find you?
The website is www.drvanderhorst.com. So it's www.drvanderhorst.com. It's real easy.
I have
And
to go.
sign up for my blog while you're there.
Yeah, you have a lot of great content. Your website's fantastic. There's a lot of insight there, and for that, all of it, I appreciate you being with us.
You're welcome. Happy
Thank
to
you so
do it.
much.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.